Right. Okay. Well, today I'm Nancy Weitz. I'm from the BLE. So thanks for the name check, Richard. And we're really happy to be involved in your book. That was fantastic. I'm talking today very quickly about, I'm going to present a simple practical model that looks at the intersection, that maps the intersections between roles and tasks within asynchronous online discussions, primarily in MOOCs. It's a fairly specific thing, but I think there's much wider implications to that as well. Also, the visible presence of the educator, and by the educator, I mean staff members involved directly in delivering a course, and the amount of learner dependence or independence on those educators, which is closely related to their expectations of the amount and type of educator interaction. Right, so this came about by a simple session for training our MOOC mentors, and one of those MOOCs is the one Richard mentioned, which is the Coursera one, Get Interactive, and another one is a digital skills awareness course on FutureLearn for people starting higher education. And the idea really was to talk about what the duties of those mentors were going to be within the discussions, and to try to clarify the role of moderator, which was pretty fuzzy. If you've ever sort of thought between moderator and facilitator, the information out there is pretty murky about how those roles differ. And then by doing that, by coming up with this, I began to explore how the expectations for learner independence are impacted on how you define those roles and what your expectations are. Okay, the model here on the left is the roles. And I've done this as a continuum, as by trying to kind of fix a definition for moderator and facilitator. I looked at the whole spectrum of online forum interaction from the kind of staff, or just say presence from this kind of staff end of things. On the right-hand side, it's the kinds of duties from admin at the monitor level down to teaching at the tutor level. Along the bottom is amount of dependence versus independence. And then the top to bottom is minimum presence versus maximum presence. So I've tried to kind of cram all of this into this model. And one of the things I want to know from you is whether this works, whether you think there's kind of an application for this, and whether it's worth developing, or if there are problems that I need to adjust. So the thing that this did is primarily was allowed me to, during our training session, was to fix on moderator as a place where there's some admin duties, there's a little bit of interaction with the learners in the form of a little encouragement, pointing people to the right direction if they need help, and that sort of thing, as opposed to a facilitator who is actually involved in helping the learners learn how to interact with each other and how to kind of deepen their knowledge by having those kinds of conversations and commenting on each other's work, as opposed to the tutor who's the subject matter expert who has the knowledge about whatever the subject is. And so that's, and of course, monitor is somebody who's more like manning the CCTV, who's just keeping an eye on things and maybe occasionally deleting a post that maybe doesn't belong there, that kind of thing. So I tried to map this out to understand this territory. I think there are, implications for course design. If you have something like this kind of map, you can think about what you've got in terms of your goals, your learning objectives, the resources available, the delivery options, the platform and what's available for you on the platform, and workload, time, skills of your staff, etc. To look at forums not as kind of the poor relation of online learning, which they've been for 20 years, especially as more exciting things, synchronous and video and everything else came about, but it's still a key place in which learners interact with each other and with educators when there's availability to do so. And then finally, also for defining those terms and making sure you understand what people are going to be doing on the staff end of things when it comes to those discussions. It's useful for staff training. As I said, that was the whole point of this in the first place, to make sure we all understood what those duties were going to be. So our volunteer mentors, unpaid and volunteering their skills, could be doing things in an efficient and effective way. And then finally, whether there's any kind of, whether this provides any sort of launching off point for further research about these kinds of intersections. by and large, I really just want to know whether it's useful, and what you think about it, and whether you see anything that's an issue or have any questions. That's me.
Thanks very much.
Hopefully I didn't talk too fast.
Lightning, so we do have a few minutes for questions.
Thanks, Nancy. Really interesting. I have sort of a comment really, and then a question. I guess what we're looking at is a model that's perhaps about MOOC facilitation.
Yeah, I did say that. It's primarily MOOCs. I mean, it works in terms of other courses, but not anything, you know, that we are looking at the kinds of environments that are very hard to get any kind of really meaningful interaction going. So trying to just sort of keep a handle on it the best way you can.
Brilliant. And my other question was the dependence-independence line along the bottom. Who is that?
Right, sorry, I didn't make that clear. Right, so the idea there, that's learner dependence, but that's more about dependent on the interaction within the forum. So it isn't so much, you know, the learning materials or video or lectures or anything else. It's really how much the learner is expecting and depending on the educator end of things, you know, whether that's a staff member of some sort, to be intervening and speaking to them and doing that, rather than they're talking to each other and it's really quite independent.
So maybe that's a place that I would see it being slightly different, but that's just a question I'm posing, whether that's quite right, that dependence independence, because basically as a tutor I'm hoping to develop much more learner independence from the, unless I'm misreading it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know it's not perfect. I might be stuffing in too much here, but the line, yeah, the idea really is that and it isn't so much necessarily the tutor of the course, it's the tutoring role within the discussion. So there's more to kind of play with in there. I know it's a little bit messy, but that's it. It's kind of early days, so I'm trying it out here and seeing if it can be refined.
Not messy at all. Not at all, Nancy. I was just...
Well, the thinking's a bit messy still.
Can you read that question in the chat? Do you want me to read it out to you?
Okay.
I'll read it out. It seems surprising to me that the role changes to someone without the subject knowledge as the learner becomes more independent. Surely, even at that point, it is important that the staff member has the knowledge, but that the learner might need less contact. I think the level of skill required is still quite high.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure I actually caught all of that question. I wonder if I could get I can't get back to my original window, so I can actually pick up the chat myself. There we go. Yes, I can. Okay, yeah, let me look at that. Yeah, I mean, these might be fluid too, and as I said, it depends on the type of course. You know, I was looking at a 3-week, you know, kind of awareness course, so it wasn't an in-depth subject knowledge kind of thing, and I think that would probably, you know, change the whole kind of arrangement a little bit. Certainly the emphasis might change and might grow in that sort of thing.
So I think we just have time for a lightning question. Is anyone has one short? Is dependence independence a measure of the frequency of interactions between the student and these different roles?
It's not about between the students. It's between the students and the different roles. Frequency or depth. I would just say it's more about expectation in general, about whether the learner is expecting that anyone in any of those roles will be the person that they're talking to rather than talking to each other. So that's kind of where the dependence or independence thing comes in. It's what is the purpose for this whole discussion? Who are they talking to? Is it about having questions answered by the expert, or is it about having a learning space that's just for the learners?
Well, thanks very much, everyone. You have a few moments before moving on to the keynotes. Let's just give everyone a final round of applause. Thank you very much.